They relate, O Ifrit, that in a certain city were two men who dwelt in adjoining houses, having a common party wall, and one of them envied the other and looked on him with an evil eye, and did his utmost endeavor to injure him, and, albeit at all times he was jealous of his neighbor, his malice at last grew on him till he could hardly eat or enjoy the sweet pleasures of sleep. But the envy did nothing save prosper, and the more the other strove to injure him, the more he got and gained and throve. At last the malice of his neighbor and the man's constant endeavor to work him a harm came to his knowledge, so he said, By Allah! God's earth is wide enough for its people, and, leaving the neighborhood, he repaired to another city where he bought himself a piece of land in which was a dried up draw well, old and in ruinous condition. Here he built him an oratory and, furnishing it with a few necessaries, took up his abode therein, and devoted himself to prayer and worshipping Allah Almighty, and fakirs and holy mendicants flocked to him from all quarters, and his fame went abroad through the city and that countryside. Presently the news reached his envious neighbor, of what good fortune had befallen him and how the city notables had become his disciples, so he traveled to the place and presented himself at the holy man's hermitage, and was met by the envied with welcome and greeting and all honor. Then quoth the envier, I have a word to say to thee, and this is the cause of my faring hither, and I wish to give thee a piece of good news, so come with me to thy cell. Thereupon the envied arose and took the envier by the hand, and they went into the inmost part of the hermitage, but the envier said, Bid thy fakirs retire to their cells, for I will not tell thee what I have to say, save in secret where none may hear us. Accordingly the envied said to his fakirs, Retire to your private cells, and, when all had done as he bade them, he set out with his visitor and walked a little way until the twain reached the ruinous old well. And as they stood upon the brink the envier gave the envied a push which tumbled him headlong into it, unseen of any, whereupon he fared forth, and went his ways, thinking to have had slain him. Now this well happened to be haunted by the Jann who, seeing the case, bore him up and let him down little by little, till he reached the bottom, when they seated him upon a large stone. Then one of them asked his fellows, Wot ye who be this man? And they answered, Nay. This man, continued the speaker, is the envied hight who, flying from the envier, came to dwell in our city, and here founded this holy house, and he hath edified us by his litanies and his lections of the Quran. But the envier set out and journeyed till he rejoined him, and cunningly contrived to deceive him and cast him into the well where we now are. But the fame of this good man hath this very night come to the Sultan of our city, who designeth to visit him on the morrow on account of his daughter. What aileth his daughter? Asked one, and another answered, She is possessed of a spirit, for Maimun, son of Damdam, is madly in love with her, but, if this pious man knew the remedy, her cure would be as easy as could be. Hereupon one of them inquired, And what is the medicine? And he replied, The black tomcat which is with him in the oratory hath, on the end of his tail, a white spot, the size of a dirham. Let him pluck 7 white hairs from the spot, then let him fumigate her therewith, and the marid will flee from her and not return, so she shall be sane for the rest of her life. All this took place, O Ifrit, within earshot of the envied, who listened readily. When dawn broke and morn arose in sheen and shone, the fakirs went to seek the sheikh and found him climbing up the wall of the well, whereby he was magnified in their eyes. Then, knowing that naught save the black tomcat could supply him with the remedy required, he plucked the 7 tail hairs from the white spot and laid them by him, and hardly had the sun risen ere the Sultan entered the hermitage, with the great lords of his estate, bidding the rest of his retinue to remain standing outside. The envied gave him a hearty welcome, and seating him by his side asked him, Shall I tell thee the cause of thy coming? The king answered yes. He continued, Thou hast come upon pretext of a visitation, but it is in thy heart to question me of thy daughter. Replied the king, 'Tis even so, O thou holy sheikh, and the envied continued, Send and fetch her, and I trust to heal her forthright, and such it be the will of Allah. The king in great joy sent for his daughter, and they brought her pinioned and fettered. The envied made her sit down behind a curtain, and taking out the hairs fumigated her therewith, whereupon that which was in her head cried out and departed from her. The girl was at once restored to her right mind, and veiling her face, said, What hath happened, and who brought me hither? The Sultan rejoiced with a joy which nothing could exceed, and kissed his daughter's eyes, and the holy man's hand. Then, turning to his great lords, he asked, How say ye? What fee deserveth he who hath made my daughter whole? And all answered, He deserveth her to wife. And the king said, Ye speak sooth. So he married him to her, and the envied thus became son-in-law to the king. And after a little the wazir died, and the king said, Whom can I make minister in his stead? Thy son-in-law, replied the courtiers. So the envied became a wazir, and after a while the sultan also died, and the lieges said, Whom shall we make king? And all cried, The wazir. So the wazir was forthright made sultan, and he became king regnant, a true ruler of men. One day as he had mounted his horse, and, in the eminence of his kinglihood, was riding amidst his emirs and wazirs and the grandees of his realm, his eye fell upon his old neighbor, the envier, who stood afoot on his path. So he turned to one of his ministers, and said, Bring hither that man and cause him no affright. The wazir brought him, and the king said, Give him 1,000 miskals of gold from the treasury, and load him 10 camels with goods for trade, and send him under escort to his own town. Then he bade his enemy farewell and sent him away, and forbore to punish him for the many and great evils he had done. See, O Ifrit, the mercy of the envy to the envier, who had hated him from the beginning and had borne him such bitter malice and never met him without causing him trouble, and had driven him from house and home, and then had journeyed for the sole purpose of taking his life by throwing him into the well. Yet he did not requite his injurious dealing, but forgave him and was bountiful to him. Then I wept before him, O my lady, with sore weeping, never was there sorer, and I recited, Pardon my fault, for 'tis the wise man's wont all faults to pardon and revenge forgo. In sooth all manner faults in me contain, then deign of goodness mercy grace to show. Whoso imploreth pardon from on high should hold his hand from sinners here below. Said the Ifrit, Lengthen not thy words. As to my slaying thee fear it not, and as to my pardoning thee hope it not, but from my bewitching thee there is no escape. Then he tore me from the ground which closed under my feet and flew with me into the firmament till I saw the earth as a large white cloud or a saucer in the midst of the waters. Presently he set me down on a mountain, and taking a little dust, over which he muttered some magical words, sprinkled me therewith, saying, Quit that shape and take thou the shape of an ape. And on the instant I became an ape, a tailless baboon, the son of a century. Now when he had left me and I saw myself in this ugly and hateful shape, I wept for myself, but resigned my soul to the tyranny of time and circumstance, well weeting that fortune is fair and constant to no man. I descended the mountain and found at the foot a desert plain, long and broad, over which I travelled for the space of a month till my course brought me to the brink of the briny sea. After standing there a while, I was ware of a ship in the offing which ran before a fair wind making for the shore. I hid myself behind a rock on the beach and waited till the ship drew near, when I leapt on board. I found her full of merchants and passengers, and one of them cried, O captain, this ill-omened brute will bring us ill luck. And another said, Turn this ill-omened beast out from among us. The captain said, Let us kill it. Another said, Slay it with the sword. A third, Drown it. And a fourth, Shoot it with an arrow. But I sprang up and laid hold of the rice's skirt, and shed tears which poured down my chops. The captain took pity on me, and said, O merchants! This ape hath appealed to me for protection, and I will protect him. Henceforth he is under my charge, so let none do him aught hurt or harm, otherwise there will be bad blood between us. Then he entreated me kindly, and whatsoever he said I understood, and ministered to his every want and served him as a servant, albeit my tongue would not obey my wishes, so that he came to love me. The vessel sailed on, the wind being fair, for the space of 50 days, at the end of which we cast anchor under the walls of a great city wherein was a world of people, especially learned men, none could tell their number save Allah. No sooner had we arrived than we were visited by certain Mameluke officials from the king of that city, who, after boarding us, greeted the merchants and giving them joy of safe arrival said, Our king welcometh you, and sendeth you this roll of paper, whereupon each and every of you must write a line. For ye shall know that the king's minister, a calligrapher of renown, is dead, and the king hath sworn a solemn oath that he will make none wazir in his stead who cannot write as well as he could. He then gave us the scroll which measured 10 cubits long by a breadth of 1, and each of the merchants who knew how to write wrote a line thereon, even to the last of them, after which I stood up, still in the shape of an ape, and snatched the roll out of their hands. They feared lest I should tear it or throw it overboard, so they tried to stay me and scare me, but I signed to them that I could write, whereat all marveled, saying, "We never yet saw an ape write." And the captain cried, "Let him write, and if he scribble and scrabble we will kick him out and kill him, but if he write fair and scholarly I will adopt him as my son, for surely I never yet saw a more intelligent and well-mannered monkey than he. Would heaven my real son were his match in morals and manners." I took the reed, and stretching out my paw, dipped it in ink and wrote, in the hand used for letters, these 2 couplets. Time hath recorded gifts she gave the great, but none recorded thine which be far higher. Allah ne'er orphan men by loss of thee who be of goodness mother, bounty's sire. And I wrote in Rayhani or larger letters elegantly curved. Thou hast a reed of reed to every land, whose driving causeth all the world to thrive. Nil is the Nile of Misriam by thy boons who makest misery smile with fingers 5. Then I wrote in the soul's character. There be no writer who from death shall fleet, but what his hand hath writ men shall repeat. Write, therefore, not save what shall serve thee when thou seat on judgment day and so thou seat. Then I wrote in the character Nask. When to sore parting fate our love shall doom, to distant life by destiny decreed. We cause the inkhorn's lips to plain our pains, and tongue our utterance with a talking reed. And I wrote in the Tamar character. Kingdom with none endures, if thou deny this truth, where be the kings of earlier earth? Set trees of goodliness while rule endures, and when thou art fallen they shall tell thy worth. And I wrote in the character Mahakok. When ope the inkhorn of thy wealth and fame take ink of generous heart and gracious hand. Write brave and noble deeds while write thou can and win thee praise from point of pen and brand. Then I gave the scroll to the officials and, after we all had written our line, they carried it before the king. When he saw the paper no writing pleased him save my writing, and he said to the assembled courtiers, "Go seek the writer of these lines and dress him in a splendid robe of honor, then mount him on a she-mule, let a band of music precede him and bring him to the presence." At these words they smiled and the king was wroth with them and cried, "O accursed! I give you an order and you laugh at me." "O king," replied they, "if we laugh 'tis not at thee and not without a cause." "And what is it?" asked he, and they answered, "O king, thou orderest us to bring to thy presence the man who wrote these lines. Now the truth is that he who wrote them is not of the sons of Adam, but an ape, a tailless baboon, belonging to the ship captain." Quoth he, "Is this true that you say?" Quoth they, "Yea. By the rights of thy munificence." The king marveled at their words and shook with mirth and said, "I am minded to buy this ape of the captain." Then he sent messengers to the ship with the mule, the dress, the guard and the state drums, saying, "Not the less do you clothe him in the robe of honor and mount him on the mule and let him be surrounded by the guards and preceded by the band of music." They came to the ship and took me from the captain and robed me in the robe of honor and, mounting me on the she-mule, carried me in state procession through the streets, whilst the people were amazed and amused. And folk said to one another, "Hello! Is our Sultan about to make an ape his minister?" And came all agog crowding to gaze at me, and the town was astir and turned topsy-turvy on my account. When they brought me up to the king and set me in his presence, I kissed the ground before him 3 times, and once before the high chamberlain and great officers, and he bade me be seated, and I sat respectfully on shins and knees, and all who were present marveled at my fine manners, and the king most of all. Thereupon he ordered the lieges to retire, and, when none remained save the king's majesty, the eunuch on duty and a little white slave, he bade them set before me the table of food, containing all manner of birds, whatever hoppeth and flieth and treateth in nest, such as quail and sandgrouse. Then he signed to me to eat with him, so I rose and kissed ground before him, then sat me down and ate with him. And when the table was removed I washed my hands in 7 waters and took the reed case and reed, and wrote instead of speaking these couplets. Wail for the little partridges on porringer and plate, cry for the ruin of the fries and stews well marinate. Keen as I keen for loved, lost daughters of the Kata grouse, and omelette round the fair and browned fowls agglomerate. O fire and heart of me for fish, those deux poissons I saw, bedded on new-made scones and cakes in piles to laniate. For thee, O vermicelli, aches my very maw. I hold without thee every taste and joy are clean annihilate. Those eggs have rolled their yellow eyes in torturing pains of fire ere served with hash and fritters hot, that delicatesse Kate. Praised be Allah for his baked and roast and awe. How good this pulse, these potherbs steeped in oil with isil combinate. When hunger sated was, I elbow-propped fell back upon meat pudding wherein gleamed the bangles that my wits omelette. Then woke I sleeping appetite to eat as though in sport sweets from brocaded trays and kickshaws most elaborate. Be patient, soul of me. Time is a haughty, jealous wight, today he seems dark lowering and tomorrow fair to sight. Then I rose and seated myself at a respectful distance while the king read what I had written, and marveled, exclaiming, "Oh the miracle, that an ape should be gifted with this graceful style and this power of penmanship! By Allah, 'tis a wonder of wonders." Presently they set before the king choice wines in flagons of glass and he drank, then he passed on the cup to me, and I kissed the ground and drank and wrote on it. With fire they boiled me to loose my tongue, and pain and patience gave for fellowship. Hence comes at hands of men upbear me high and honey-dew from lips of maid I sip. And these also. Morn saith to night, withdraw and let me shine, so drain we draughts that dull all pain and pine. I doubt, so fine the glass, the wine so clear, if 'tis the wine in glass or glass in wine. The king read my verse and said with a sigh, were these gifts in a man, he would excel all the folk of his time and age. Then he called for the chessboard, and said, say, wilt thou play with me? And I signed with my head, yes. Then I came forward and ordered the pieces and played with him 2 games, both of which I won. He was speechless with surprise, so I took the pen case and, drawing forth a reed, wrote on the board these 2 couplets. 2 hosts fair fighting through the livelong day, nor is their battling ever finished. Until, when darkness girdeth them about, the twain go sleeping in a single bed. The king read these lines with wonder and delight and said to his eunuch, O Muqbil, go to thy mistress, Sid al-Husn, and say her, come, speak the king who biddeth thee hither to take thy solace in seeing this right wondrous ape. So the eunuch went out and presently returned with the lady who, when she saw me veiled her face and said, O my father! Hast thou lost all sense of honor? How cometh it thou art pleased to send for me and show me to strange men? O Sid al-Husn, said he, no man is here save this little foot-page and the eunuch who reared thee and I, thy father. From whom, then, dost thou veil thy face? She answered, this whom thou deemest an ape is a young man, a clever and polite, a wise and learned and the son of a king, but he is ensorcelled and the Ifrit Jarjaris, who is of the seed of Iblis, cast a spell upon him, after putting to death his own wife the daughter of King Iphidamus lord of the islands of Abnus. The king marveled at his daughter's words and, turning to me, said, is this true that she saith of thee? And I signed by a nod of my head the answer yea, verily, and wept sore. Then he asked his daughter, whence knewest thou that he is ensorcelled? And she answered, O my dear papa, there was with me in my childhood an old woman, a wily one and a wise and a witch to boot, and she taught me the theory of magic and its practice, and I took notes in writing and therein waxed perfect, and have committed to memory 170 chapters of egromantic formulas, by the least of which I could transport the stones of thy city behind the mountain Kaf and the circumambient main, or make it sight an abyss of the sea and its people fishes swimming in the midst of it. O my daughter, said her father, I conjure thee, by my life, disenchant this young man, that I may make him my wazir and marry thee to him, for indeed he is an ingenious youth and a deeply learned. With joy and goodly gree, she replied and, hending in hand an iron knife whereon was inscribed the name of Allah in Hebrew characters, she described a wide circle, and Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased saying her permitted say. Now when it was the 14th night,